Story 1.
I never liked the basement of the house that I inherited from my late uncle. It was dark, dusty, and full of old junk that he had collected over the years. I only used the part of the basement that I had turned into my home office, where I worked as a freelance writer. The rest of the basement was off limits to me, and I never bothered to explore it. That was until one night, when I heard a loud thud from the other side of the basement. It sounded like something heavy had fallen over, and it piqued my curiosity. I got up from my laptop and grabbed a flashlight, wondering what could have caused the noise. I opened the door that led to the rest of the basement and walked in, shining my flashlight around. The basement was a mess, filled with old furniture, boxes, and bags that were covered in dust and cobwebs. I saw a large wooden chest that had fallen over, spilling its contents on the floor. It looked like it had been there for ages, and I wondered what it contained. I approached the chest and saw that it had some old books, papers, and a metal box with a lock. I decided to investigate the chest and its contents, hoping to find something interesting or valuable. I picked up the metal box and tried to open it, but it was locked. I looked for a key, but I couldn't find one. I noticed that the box had some strange symbols and words engraved on it, but I couldn't read them. They looked like some kind of ancient language, and I felt a sudden chill as I touched them. I heard a whisper in my ear. "Open it." I was startled by the whisper and dropped the box on the floor. I looked around, but I saw no one. I thought that I was imagining things and picked up the box again. I felt a strong urge to open it, as if something was compelling me to do so. I found a crowbar in the chest and used it to pry open the lock. I opened the box and saw a black leather book with a pentagram on the cover. I opened the book and saw that it was a diary of my uncle, who was a serial killer. I read the first page and realized that my uncle had killed dozens of people and buried them in the basement. He had written down the names, dates, and details of his victims, and how he had tortured and killed them. He had also drawn some diagrams and sketches of his methods and tools, and some of them were stained with blood. He had written that he was doing it for a higher purpose, and that he was following the instructions of the book. He had called it the Book of Shadows, and said that it was a source of dark power and knowledge. He had said that he had found it in a secret chamber in the basement, and that it had spoken to him. I felt a surge of horror and disgust as I read his words, and I decided to call the police. I put the book and the box back in the chest and ran to my office where I had my phone. I dialed 911 and told them what I had found. They said that they would send a squad car right away and that I should stay calm and wait for them. I hung up and waited, hoping that they would arrive soon. I heard a knock on the door and thought that it was the police. I opened the door and saw a man with a knife who said, "Hello, nephew. I've been waiting for you." I recognized the man as my uncle, who was supposed to be dead. He had the same face, the same voice, and the same evil smile. He was wearing a black cloak and a hood, and he had a pentagram necklace around his neck. He looked like a cultist, and I realized that he was one. I screamed, but no one heard me. He had cut the phone line and the power, and he had blocked the windows and the doors. He had trapped me in the house, and he had planned this for a long time. He said, "You have been fooled. I never died. I only faked my death. I have been hiding in the basement, waiting for the right moment to kill you. You see, you are the last sacrifice that I need to complete the ritual. The Book of Shadows told me that I need to kill my own blood, and then I will become immortal and powerful. You are the only one who can stop me, but you won't. You will die, and I will live forever." He lunged at me with his knife, and I tried to fight back, but he was stronger and faster than me, and he had the advantage of surprise. He grabbed me by the neck and said, "You have been fooled." I felt his breath on my face and saw his eyes filled with madness and hatred. He raised his knife and said, "Welcome to hell." I closed my eyes and waited for the end. But then I heard a loud bang and a flash of light. I opened my eyes and saw a bullet in his forehead and his body falling to the ground. Behind him I saw a woman holding a gun. She had long blonde hair and blue eyes, and she was wearing a leather jacket and jeans. She looked familiar, and I realized that she was one of my clients. I had written a book for her, a biography of her father, who was a famous detective. She had told me that he had died of a heart attack, but now I knew the truth. He had been killed by my uncle, who was his archenemy. She had tracked him down and followed him to the house, and she had saved me. She said, "You have been fooled. He was not your uncle, he was a serial killer. He killed my father, and he was going to kill you. I am sorry that I lied to you, but I had to. I needed your help to find him and to stop him. You did a great job, and I owe you my life."
Story 2.
It was a dark and stormy night. The rain was pouring down and the wind was howling. I was alone in the house, and I had a strange feeling that something wasn't right. I decided to go down to the basement to check on some things. As I descended the stairs, I noticed that the lights were flickering. I thought it was just the storm causing the power to fluctuate. But as I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. There, in the corner of the basement, was a dark figure. It was tall and thin, and it seemed to be moving towards me. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its presence. I tried to stay calm and rational. I told myself that it was just a shadow or maybe a reflection. But as it got closer, I realized that it was something else entirely. The figure was making strange noises, like a mix of whispers and screams. It was as if it was trying to communicate with me, but I couldn't understand what it was saying. I tried to run, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. I couldn't move, and the figure was getting closer and closer. Suddenly, the lights went out, and the basement was plunged into darkness. I could hear the figure's footsteps getting louder and louder. I felt its cold, clammy hand on my shoulder. I froze in place, unable to breathe. My heart was pounding so hard that I thought it would burst out of my chest. Then, just as suddenly as the lights had gone out, they came back on. The figure was gone. I looked around frantically, but there was no sign of it anywhere. I ran up the stairs and out of the basement, not stopping until I reached the safety of my bedroom. I locked the door and sat on the edge of my bed, trying to catch my breath. What had just happened? Was it a dream? A hallucination? Or was it something more sinister? I decided to call my friend, who was into paranormal stuff. He had always been fascinated by the supernatural, and I knew he would be able to help me make sense of what I had just experienced. As we talked, I realized that there had been a series of strange occurrences in the house over the past few weeks. The lights had been flickering more frequently, and I had heard strange noises coming from the basement. My friend suggested that we come over to investigate the house together. He brought his equipment and started looking for any signs of paranormal activity. As we walked through the house, we noticed that the temperature seemed to be fluctuating. In some rooms, it was freezing cold, while in others, it was unbearably hot. We decided to head back to the basement, where the most activity had been reported. As we descended the stairs, we noticed that the lights were flickering again. Suddenly, we heard a loud noise coming from the corner of the basement. We both froze in place, unsure of what to do. Just then, a bright light appeared in the corner, and a figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall and thin, just like the one I had seen before. My friend took out his camera and started recording. The figure seemed to be moving towards us, but it didn't seem to be threatening. As it got closer, I could see that it was a woman, dressed in old-fashioned clothing. She looked at us with a sad expression on her face. My friend asked her if she needed any help, but she just shook her head. She then reached out her hand towards me as if she wanted to touch me. I backed away in fright. The woman smiled and then disappeared into the shadows. The lights went back to normal, and the basement was once again quiet. My friend and I looked at each other, both of us in shock. We immediately decided to check if we had managed to record this strange encounter on camera. But to our surprise, there was nothing on the record, just an empty basement and no sign of the ghost of a woman. We didn't understand what it was, but fortunately, it never happened again.
Story 3.
I never believed in ghosts or anything supernatural. I always thought those stories were just a bunch of hocus pocus, meant to scare people for fun. But that all changed one fateful night when I experienced something that I can't explain. It was a typical evening at my new house. I had recently moved in and was still getting used to the creaks and groans of an old building. The basement, in particular, gave me the creeps.
It was damp and musty, with low ceilings and flickering lights. I avoided going down there as much as possible, but that night, curiosity got the better of me. I descended the creaky stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. The air grew colder with each step, sending shivers down my spine. As I reached the bottom, I noticed a strange symbol etched into the wall. It looked like some sort of ancient language, but I couldn't make out what it meant. Just as I was about to turn back, I heard a faint whisper coming from the darkness. "Help me," it pleaded. My blood ran cold as I realized I wasn't alone. I strained my ears, trying to locate the source of the voice. It seemed to be coming from behind a pile of old boxes. Summoning all my courage, I approached the boxes and began to move them aside. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the basement, extinguishing the flickering lights. I stood, frozen in fear, unable to see anything in the pitch-black darkness. Then, out of nowhere, a hand grabbed my shoulder. I screamed and stumbled backward, crashing into a stack of crates. As I struggled to regain my footing, I heard a voice whispering in my ear, "Get out while you still can." I bolted up the stairs, my heart racing. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The operator answered, and I blurted out my address, begging for help. I could hear the fear in my own voice, and it only made the situation feel more real. Within minutes, the police arrived at my house. They searched the basement but found nothing out of the ordinary. They assured me that it was probably just my imagination playing tricks on me, but I knew what I had experienced was real. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong in that basement. Over the next few weeks, strange occurrences became a regular part of my life. Objects would move on their own, doors would slam shut, and whispers would echo through the house. I reached out to a paranormal investigator, hoping they could shed some light on the situation. They conducted an extensive investigation, setting up cameras and recording devices throughout the house. But even they were stumped by what they found. The evidence captured on their equipment was chilling. Shadows darted across the screen, disembodied voices whispered in empty rooms, and objects levitated without explanation. It was undeniable proof that something supernatural was happening in my home. In the end, I had no choice but to move out. The constant fear and unease had become too much to bear. As I packed up my belongings, I couldn't help but wonder what had caused these strange occurrences. Was it a restless spirit? A malevolent force? I may never know. But one thing is for certain. That incident in the basement changed me forever.
Story 4.
I never liked the basement of our house. It was dark, damp, and smelled like mold. I always avoided going there, unless I had to do some laundry or get something from the storage. My wife, Anna, felt the same way. She often asked me to go with her when she needed to go downstairs. We joked that there was a monster hiding in the basement, waiting for us to let our guard down. One night, we heard a loud thud from the basement. It sounded like something heavy had fallen or been knocked over. We looked at each other, wondering what it could be. Maybe a rat, or a pipe, or a box of old books. We decided to check it out, just in case. We grabbed a flashlight and a baseball bat and headed to the basement door. We opened the door and turned on the light switch. Nothing happened. The power must have gone out. We turned on the flashlight and descended the stairs. The basement was pitch black, except for the narrow beam of light from our flashlight. We scanned the room, looking for the source of the noise. We saw nothing out of the ordinary. Just the usual clutter of laundry machines, shelves, boxes, and tools. We walked around the basement, checking every corner and crevice. We found nothing. No sign of damage or disturbance or intrusion. We shrugged, thinking it was a false alarm. Maybe we had imagined the sound, or it had come from somewhere else. We turned to go back upstairs when we heard it again. Another thud, louder and closer than before. It came from behind a pile of boxes in the far corner of the basement. We froze, feeling a surge of fear and curiosity. We pointed the flashlight at the boxes and saw something move. Something big and hairy and alive. It was a bear. A huge black bear with yellow eyes and sharp teeth. It had somehow gotten into our basement and was now trapped and angry. It roared and charged at us, knocking over the boxes and the shelves. We screamed and ran for the stairs. We barely made it to the door, slamming it shut behind us. We locked the door and leaned against it, panting and shaking. We heard the bear banging on the door, trying to break through. We knew it was only a matter of time before it did. We had to call for help. We grabbed our phone and dialed 911. We told the operator what was happening and begged them to send someone fast. They said they would and told us to stay calm and safe. We waited for what seemed like an eternity, listening to the bear's furious attempts to escape. We hoped that the door would hold and that the police would arrive soon. We wondered how the bear had gotten into our basement and why it had chosen our house. Finally, we heard sirens outside. We looked out the window and saw several police cars and animal control trucks parked in front of our house. We saw officers and agents carrying tranquilizer guns and nets approaching our basement door. We heard them shouting, telling us to stay inside and away from the door. We did as they said and watched from a safe distance. We heard a loud bang followed by another roar. The bear had broken through the door and was now facing the armed men and women. They fired their tranquilizers, aiming for the bear's chest and neck. The bear dodged some of the darts but was hit by several others. It staggered and fell to the ground. It was still breathing but unconscious. The agents moved in and secured the bear with a net and a collar. They lifted it onto a stretcher and carried it to one of the trucks. They checked its vital signs and gave it some water. They said they would take it to a wildlife sanctuary where it would be treated and released. The agents, it was a rare and endangered species, and that they were glad it was alive. They asked us if we were okay and if we needed any medical attention. We said we were fine, just shaken and scared. They understood and that they were sorry for what had happened. The agents said they would investigate how the bear had gotten into our basement and if there were any others in the area, and also would help us with the damage and the insurance. They thanked us for our cooperation and left. We watched them drive away, taking the bear with them. I was relieved that it was over and that no one was hurt. We were grateful that the bear was safe and that it would have a chance to live in peace. We went back inside and locked the door. We decided to sleep in the living room, away from the basement. The next day, we called a contractor in the morning and have the basement sealed off. We decided to move to a new house as soon as possible, one without a basement. We decided to never joke about monsters in the basement again.